And Sarah, her dogs, Jack, Neb, and Jake, they're not Jack, Neb, Jake. They have three separate names, three separate identities. And if you don't foster that, that's when you kind of become pushed out of the equation. You're the guy who gives them food and lets them in and out and takes them for walks, but you're not anything else. So you need to develop a relationship. That's just how it goes. You do that to create the relationships that you want. And if you treat them as a unit, then you never get that piece. Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Dog Sense. Today is a subject that Sarah and I live every single day, and it is about how to create harmony in a multi-dog household. I feel like I've never had a single dog household. As long as I've known you, you've pretty much been a multi-dog household.
Yeah. And honestly, most of our students are multi-dog households as well. It's, some people do only have one dog, but a lot of times when you get one, you wind up with another.
Yeah, you just can't have one. And I actually think that dogs should have a companion. There's some that shouldn't, but I think in general they thrive when they have another dog. So, and the last year has been seeing a lot of people add dogs to their family. So this is something we're very passionate about. We believe that you need to teach harmony. It's not something that they can just go work out in the back, because often it doesn't work out in the back. So let's talk about the biggest problem. And I think that people don't define to their dogs that they own everything. You know, the dogs are like, yeah, so this is mine, and then that's his. And no, basically you have to teach your dogs that all the resources they want belong to you. Now, maybe we should go over what resources are, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and a lot of times when people hear resources, they think about resource guarding, that kind of thing. And yeah, a resource can be food, but it can also be toys. It could also be blankets. It could be beds. A resource could also be their water bowl. It could be, freedom to get outside to the backyard, things like that. So when you think about resources, when we're talking about this, it's all of the things that are within their lives.
Right. And again, we'd like you to know that things that you think are not a resource might very well be a resource. It's different, and it can change day to day.
Yes.
So you have to be on this. Now, we also say you need to provide appropriate mental and physical stimulation for your dogs. And of course, we're dog trainers, so we see that as being a very important piece of it. A lot of people, Sarah, are good with the exercise part. They're like, oh, I take my dog for like a 10-mile hike every day. They come home tired, but that's not enough, because we want to tire out their brain as well as their body, because if you just exercise them a lot, you create athletes. Now, let's back up a little bit and say that this formula that we've created is not just for dogs who are fighting or you're having problems with now. This is what you do. If you have harmony, you got to do these things to keep it, because one day it's going to go sideways on you, probably during a period of stress or the holidays. So you've got to be super aware of that. So yeah.
Yeah, and that also leads into the next one too, where we talk about spending individual time with each dog, right? So maybe one of your dogs loves to go for bike rides, but another one is a little bit more of a couch potato, and he likes to do, fun, like maybe he just likes to play with some toys out in the backyard or something, right? So spending individual time doing both physical and mental exercise. Maybe one of your dogs has an awesome loose leash walk, but the other one kind of needs some extra practice on that, right? So spending the individual time with each dog is really, really important, because we want the bond that your dogs have to be strongest with you, not necessarily with each other.
Exactly. And Sarah, her dogs, Jack, Neb, and Jake, they're not Jack, Neb, Jake. They have three separate names. Separate identities. And if you don't foster that, that's when you kind of become pushed out of the equation. You're the guy who gives them food and lets them in and out and takes them for walks, but you're not anything else. So you need to develop a relationship. Like just yesterday, Ray was at the school with me most of the day. We were training together. Then she was doing demos. Then she was hanging out. Then I gave her a bath at the grooming shop. She was like, oh no. But it was me and her time. And you know what? She felt great about it when we got home. She was exhausted. And I felt great about it because I had that extra time with just her. And then that later afternoon, I spent time with just Val. And that's just how it goes. You do that to create the relationships that you want. And if you treat them as a unit, then you never get that piece.
Yeah, and a lot of times what happens, and I have to catch myself too, because with Jack and Neb, it's so easy just to do everything together, right? Go out for the training sessions together. Sure, have one crate in the car and work in the other. But it's also really important that they're able to be separated, that if I do leave Jack at home and take Nev out for a training session, that he's not losing his mind in the crate and crying and whining and getting stressed out about it. So you want to make sure that your dogs are comfortable being by themselves, and then also having one dog go out for a walk, one dog not go out. It'll help you then prevent all of those kind of other issues that we hear from owners where they say, oh, I can't just train one dog because the other one just barks the whole time, right? That's not something that comes naturally. That's something that you have to teach them and you have to work on with them.
Right. And like you said, you take one out, the other one has to be cool with it, because what if one of them had a surgery and they have to crate rest and the other one is allowed to go out? We don't want them losing their mind. And what if one has to board and you can take the other, or God forbid, right? One of them passes away and then they have no identity except the other. They have a two and that was who they were. So we want to make sure. I hope that doesn't ever happen to you, but if it does, at least the dogs have individual personalities and have a unique bond with you. All right. So one of the things we know is that sometimes in multi-dog households, things can get a little bit tense. Maybe a dog wants something or checking the other one to get out the door first. And so what we do in our training is we practice the transition from dogs being super cranked up, wild, to calm. It's like a light switch. If we can get them wild and then ask for a sit, that is no different once they know it than them being rowdy about going out for a walk and starting to like shuffle into each other and start body checking. And then us saying, lie down or sit or place, right? So they've learned how to do that outside of that super high charge tension event. They learn to do it in a training session. So we really want you all to start doing that. It's on leash. It's as an individual dog. It's not with the group. And you get them cranked up, ask for a sit, ask for a down.
Even though we did just say to work everyone individually, you also do then want to bring your training together, right? So like Kathy had mentioned, make sure that solo individually, they can go from crank to calm, but then you want to practice it together too, because when the doorbell rings and both dogs are losing their minds barking at the door, if you ever think you're going to be able to then send them to place, you got to practice that, right? Going from that crank state to calm with two dogs at once is a lot of work. And it's definitely something that you're going to want to practice. So train those behaviors individually, but then also practice them together so that as a pack, your dog can also listen to commands together.
And that's what I love about the place command. I can have one dog on place and right in front of them, I can work the other dog, which is impulse control, right? It's getting them to be super excited, but not get off their place. So in doing that, it teaches them that they can control themselves. It also teaches them that it's okay if you're hanging out with the other dog. So how many times do you see people with multiple dogs? They're petting one dog and then the other one comes up and goes, hey, how about me, right? Yeah. This teaches the dog that you can survive if your mother or father is petting you or another dog and then not the other. It's okay. You'll get your turn. And that's what we call it. We say, your turn. So Ray's on the place. I'm working with Dash. And then I switch it up and I say, Ray, your turn. And she knows what that means. It means to me, I've trained it to be like break or okay.
Yeah. All right, so this actually, we've been transitioning pretty well, because the next part of this also is you have to accept that life isn't fair, right? There's going to be different rules for different dogs in your house. My older dog, Jakey, free roam, right? He is retired. He can do whatever the heck he wants, right? But my younger dogs who are still in training, they don't get the same freedoms that he does. And that's okay. Don't let the guilt ruin your dog training, right? It's okay to have different rules for different dogs to help them be successful and also help your household have that harmony that we're looking for.
Right. Fair isn't equal. Mm-hmm. Remember that in everything. So I remember when Ryan, my son, was 17 and he was starting to drive, and Elisa, who was like 8 and 10, no, she must have been 12. She wanted to drive. And I'm like, no, you can. She was like really frustrated because he could and she couldn't, although she probably would have done it better. They're not listening to this, but you have to deal with that in humans too. You have to say, yeah, it's not fair, but that's how it is. Those are the rules. And so once your dogs understand that, life gets better. All right. So let's move into this because it's a perfect segue. Dogs often end up acting badly due to frustration. So the frustration that you're working with this dog or you're petting this dog. So this is what we're saying. You have to teach them to tolerate frustration and self-soothe. Mm-hmm. Self-soothe is a big one, right? Because the dogs are acting frustrated and somebody goes and sits next to them and pets them because they feel bad. Right. We like to say the guilt kills dog training. We should get t-shirts that say that.
I know. We do need shirts for that.
Like a little hat. So my dogs need to learn from day one right out the gate. They don't always get what they want. Mm-hmm. And it's a life lesson. If you do it early, straight out the gate, it's going to be easier. If you haven't done it, don't despair. You will get it done, but you have to stick to it. And everybody in the family has to be on board.
And I think so also, being a calm and confident presence for your dogs is really important too. Because when they get cranked and excited, if you then get worried about a fight breaking out in a tough part of the hallway, maybe it's a tight spot, anything like that, they're going to feed off of that. And a lot of times if you're out on a walk, multi-dog households, walking, one of the toughest issues we hear from with clients. And if, you're passing another dog and you get kind of nervous, you're like, oh, you're tying up on their leashes and everything, they're going to feel that and they're going to react to that. So being a calm and confident presence can also really help to instill that in your dogs as well.
Yeah. And it's really a problem because people are like, oh no, stop it. Right. And the dogs hear that and they're like, what? Oh my God, I feel tense. And then they act out. So yeah, calm and confident is really important. And, Sarah, we tell people be calm, be confident. And they're like, I'm neither of those things. We're like, work on being calmer and being more confident. We don't expect you to be super chill and like Sarah and I instantly, but it's something keep in the front of your mind and make sure you're always working on it. All right. So we have a couple bullet points here for you. We say we want you to be fair and we want you to be fun and we want you to be firm, which means if there's a rule and the dog doesn't follow it, you still have to follow through with it. Even if, you had a bad day at work or the dog looks so cute right now, that's really key. We have to say that the boundaries that you set are important, but we don't do it with intimidation. We do it through training, right? So the dogs understand because we're consistent and we've taught them what we want. Positive without being permissive. Sarah, that's my favorite one.
I was going to say that's one of my favorite ones because it helps it helps click with owners, right? What's the other one that you have? It's like that your permissiveness is not a measure of your love.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, that's the other one. An awesome Kathy quote that, again, we need on t-shirts, right? But your permissiveness is not of like the level or measure of how much you love your dog, right? You're not doing anyone any good if you let your dog bolt out the front door because he's excited for his walk. Because one day he's not going to have that leash on. He's going to go bolting out that door. He's going to go running into traffic, right? It's really all about safety there. So again, we're setting boundaries without intimidation. We're not going to respond to pushy or rude behaviors because we don't want to instill that in our dogs. We don't want them to think that that's okay, ever.
Right, because the dog, a lot of people, Sarah, say, oh, my dog pulled me up the driveway, but I was going there anyway.
Right.
Or bumped the gate open, I was going. But then the dog thinks that that's why he got out because he did that. Yeah. He doesn't know you were going to do it. So yeah, that's really important. And we like you to specialize in commands that help you manage your pack or herd or whatever. So place and down and stay individually as well as in a group, because that's a really interesting thing. Your dog can do it super well by himself, but we ask him to sit in a group. He's like, who are you talking to? And if you have a dog who you've asked to sit in a group and he doesn't and the others do, feel free to put him into the sit to make sure he understood it. And then feel free to treat the others for doing it. And then don't feel guilty because we already talked about fair is not equal. Yeah. So this is body language 101. And I wish we had a video, or maybe one time we'll do this with videos, or we'll drop a link to a body language somewhere. We'll figure out something, but you've got to know dog body language. And people are like, oh, I know when their tail is wagging, they're happy. And, when their teeth are showing, they're mad. Yeah. But that's like pre-K. You gotta have a PhD in this stuff if you're going to live with multiple dogs. So stress signals when they look away. So they're looking at something and then looking away is, think of it with people. Somebody's doing something, like you're in the bank line, right? You're standing in line and people get in a fight and you're like, dum-dum, look at that lovely ceiling. Okay. So that's a look away. It's trying to say, I'm not involved. Don't mind me. Blinking, when dogs do a lot of blinking or squinting, that's a sign. Yawning, they're not always tired. Sometimes if they're in a situation you see yawning, they're a little stressed. And stillness. We see that as one of the least read body signals that dogs throw, because in humans, imagine if like your kids are wrestling, right? And they're like mat wrestling and one of them pins the other and the other one gets still. And that means the one who still gave up. But in dogs, it doesn't. This is why people get bitten all the time. Because the dog, when they're still, obviously it's context and combination of a lot of other body signals, but stillness usually means I'm going to count to 5, 3, and then I'm going to blow up. So those are some of the signs that you have to watch for. Talk about guarding, Sarah.
Yeah, and also just like also the ones that Kathy just went through are super super subtle. They are not very clear. Like what we're going to go into with guarding, a lot some of them are subtle, but or the pushy behaviors, right? Those are very obvious. They're very clear. You'll know those. It's the subtle ones that you really have to look out for because those are going to come first. They're going to lead to the growling, snapping, barking, all of that, but you want to catch them early. Okay, so for guarding, again, resources can be used as rewards in training, but they can also be dangerous parts in training too, when we're dealing with dogs who resource guard. So they could resource guard their food, could be a bone, could be a toy. They can guard their own personal space. They can guard their own body. They can guard their crate. They can guard people. They can guard, a doorway or areas where you keep the food. Like if you always keep the food in the pantry, we have heard of plenty of dog fights happening right outside the pantry door because it's a tight space. That's where they know the food is, and that's where multiple dog households will wind up with a fight going on. So guarding, some of the signals, again, will be subtle initially. So if your one dog is laying on their bed, even if they're laying on their bed on the floor and another dog walks towards them and they turn their head away, that's a subtle cue. But if your other dog doesn't know how to read that and keeps walking towards them, most likely it's going to escalate pretty quickly. Another one could be obviously so if they're eating their food and you don't separate your dogs when they're eating, if the other dog finishes their bowl and they try to go over to your other dog's bowl, sometimes you'll see the other dog start to eat faster. They'll hunch over their food. They'll try to turn so that either they'll turn so that they're facing the other dog or turn away from the other dog to try to guard the bowl from them. Those are all really common areas in multiple dog households where we will see guarding issues. The biggest, good.
Sarah, have you ever fed your dogs out all at the same time?
Yes, now, but in the beginning, never. No. Only supervised too, though. If I'm going to feed them individually, I'm standing right there. They finish their bowl, I pick it up and I put it away. And I do not let my dogs then go sniff the other dog's bowls. I'm never going to allow that to happen.
No, some of the worst fights I've handled with students, one in particular, she had 7 dogs and they'd been together for a very long time. Like they were older dogs. Yeah. And I went over for a lesson and I said to her, "Oh, what are you doing?" Because it was the end. She said, "Oh, I'm going to feed them now." I'm like, "You don't feed them in crates or like separate rooms?" She's like, "I've never had a fight." I'm like, "Okay." Like 3 months later, she called me, horrific fight for these dogs who had never had a crossword that she noticed between each other. One of them went over to the bowl and the other one, maybe it had a bad day. Maybe it was some trigger stacking that happened. Maybe it had a rotten tooth. Who knows? It was the fight of the century. 4 of them wound up getting taken to the vet to get stitches. And it's such an easily preventable thing.
That's what I was going to say. You can easily prevent so many guarding issues from happening because sometimes guarding is genetically predisposed. Sometimes dogs, it's just in them, but other times it's unintentionally taught. Meaning your older dog eats their food bowl and you're like, "Oh, the puppy's fine. He just goes over and eats whatever's left over." But your older dog eventually is going to say, "Why? No one's helping me. Why am I the one who has to handle this now?" And then they're going to go after the other dog.
That's going to sit with them. They're going to hold that for a very long time, months and months and maybe years.
Yeah. So easy ways to prevent it. Feed them in their crates or at least feed them in separate areas or at least be supervising. Once they're done with their bowls, pick them up and put them away. Toys, like any high value stuff, bully sticks, stuffed Kongs, those should all be done in crates, right? So everyone has their special quiet time with their awesome toy. And then just keep an eye. I mean, we don't like to leave toys out around the house because we like to use them for training. But again, pick them up, put them away, put them in a closet or something, and only take them out when you're working with the dogs. Because again, another spot where if a fight's going to happen, those are kind of our red zones.
Right. Now, let's talk about when the dogs are playing, Sarah. So, owners go outside, they're having a barbecue, or they're just having that like moment of sitting outside and just chilling out and, "Oh, look, my dogs are playing." But sometimes your dogs are saying things that you would wash their mouths out with soap. You want to make sure that you understand what they're saying and not praise and reward behavior that is not really what you think it is. So let's start with mounting. I think that's pretty universal, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a pretty obvious one.
But another one, they would, that and standing on the back and shoulders, that would be something that we would go in and be like, okay, timeout. And timeout would be either you go to your separate places, one is on place, one is still free, but I'm going to get in there and let them know I'm a presence. And I let them know that because I'm watching them because I watch my dog play. All right, what else?
So another one, so rearing up on the hind legs. Again, if it's balanced, if both dogs are doing that, one will go up, one will go down, then that's fine. But if you notice that one keeps going up on the legs and then going at the other dog, a lot of times that can then lead to an issue during play. Another really clear one is neck biting. So it's when the dogs basically, they come over the back of the neck and they start like nibbling and biting. And again, initially it looks like play, but that's rude. And a lot of dogs aren't going to tolerate that for very long.
Also, can I just jump in and say, when dogs are playing, the collars my dogs wear are breakaway collars. And you can look it up and you'll see them online. And basically what that means is if the dog's jaw got caught in the collar and they pulled, it would come off the other dog's neck. Now, not in an open field, right? You're going to lose your dog. But in an open field, any kind of collar is a danger. So maybe you don't choose open fields if your dog doesn't have an awfully solid recall, because if he does have that collar on and that dog does snap it off, now he's off leash. The problem we see is dogs who are playing with each other, whether they're neck biting or just mouthing, they can get their jaws caught in their collars. And it is tragic. It is horrific. I saw it one time, like 30 something years ago in Atlanta. I'll never forget it. It was horrible. So yeah, be aware of that. If you have multiple dogs that they are going to play, they're either in a fenced-in area safe without collars on, or they're in breakaway collars.
Yep. So another one, so unbalanced play. So that one is a little bit tough to visualize and explain, but you'll kind of, when you're watching your dogs playing, you'll notice they start to mirror each other, right? So, if one of them likes to chase a little bit, then the other one likes to like run away. If they like to roll over on their back and then the other one will jump up high, you'll start to notice they'll mirror each other. If you notice that it's unbalanced, meaning something like the one dog keeps chasing the other one and the other one's just like, you notice that his body language is saying, I'm not really comfortable with this, or he doesn't then chase him back. That's the kind of signals that you're looking for, that the play is in balance and one of the dogs most likely isn't having fun.
Right. And that's for you to get in. Now, there's a really good test for that. If you feel like maybe one dog, maybe the one is on his back and the other one's jumping on him, maybe you feel he doesn't like it and he's saying, I would like you to stop. Right. Move the dog who is being wild away. And see what the dog on the ground does. Sometimes they surprise you. They're like, no, I want more. And they go after it. You're like, all right, dude, it's whatever you want. And also I like to say, I don't let play go on for a very long time. I'm not going to let them play for hours. Yep. If they're new to each other, maybe 5 minutes and then a break and then go back. Yep. If they're, even the dogs that live together at my house, 20 minutes, I'll call them back. I'll feed them. I'll do tricks with them. I'll do something else just to make sure that I'm still in their mind and they haven't hung up the phone on me.
Yeah, that's one of the most important things too. And a lot of times owners will look at us confused when we say that. And they're like, well, why don't you just let them play? Just they're having fun. And the reason why we say to interrupt it is so that the play remains fun, right? Because if they play for too long, someone's going to get tired. Someone's going to get cranky, right? That's why we interrupt the play. And then the reasons why we add training into it is for recalls, for emergency downs, for leave-its, because in a real life situation, one of the hardest things for people to recall their dogs away from is play with another dog. So if you are off leash somewhere, and maybe it is a friendly dog that runs up and you and your dog and the other dog run off together, no one's able to recall their dogs because you haven't practiced it. Right. So that's why within your household, practice those commands so that you have them.
And when you ask your dog to do something and they look at you like, oh, you're still here. I mean, that's the worst. So you want to make sure that never happens to you. All right, Sarah. So we've either given people a lot of great advice or convinced them never to get more than one dog. But whatever you decide, make sure training is a big part of your life with dogs. All right. So thank you for joining us. We're going to be back with another awesome episode as always. If you want to have us answer specific things, you can put them in the comments, right, Sarah?
Yep, absolutely. And if you ever have any questions about something that we went over in the episode, you can always email us info@kathysanto.com.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys, for listening.